Hello, welcome back to Through the Trapdoor. I'm Katie.
And I'm Emily.
And this is our podcast where we read you Harry Potter fanfiction.
Yes, we do.
Every week, that's what we do.
We try to anyway.
Oh, I read that as, and it's Mum.
I was like, what? Where are you reading?
Well, that's what happens.
We're off to a good start.
Mom! Lily yelled as soon as she got home from work. I'm going out tonight! Mrs. Evans appeared in the front hall with a cloth and a bottle of window cleaner in her hands and began attacking the small windows that lined either side of the front doorway. Where are you going? Movies, Lily replied, kicking off her shoes. I actually have some money now that Ian's remembered to give us paychecks. Who are you going with? Mrs. Evans asked, sounding curious. Ethan, Lily replied, removing her coffee-stained work apron and making her way for the laundry room to throw it into the washer. Ethan? Mrs. Evans repeated, following her daughter into the laundry room to throw her own dirty cloth into the washer. Who's Ethan? Boy at work. Is he cute? Mrs. Evans pressed, and Lily's cheeks went pink. Mom! She cried, tossing her apron into the machine. What? I'm just curious. Mrs. Evans insisted, throwing her rag on top of Lily's apron. Have you forgot about James? Lily demanded and threw in a little detergent and put the washer on the lowest setting before closing it and fiddling with the knob to make it start. No, Lily's mother replied, but you can still tell me if Eric is cute or not. Ethan, Mom. It's Ethan. Right, that's what I meant. Lily smiled. He's cute, she admitted. But it doesn't mean anything. We're just friends. All right, Mrs. Evans said, holding her hands up in defeat. I believe you. But speaking of boys, James, she began and left the laundry room. James? Lily demanded, whirling around. Did he owl me? No, actually, he... Mrs. Evans looked as though she was trying to figure out how to word it. What? Lily cried, exploding with curiosity. His head appeared in our fireplace this morning while you were at work. Lily burst into laughter. Oh my goodness, he's crazy. Well, it scared the dickens out of Petunia at the very least, Mrs. Evans replied. He said he'd be back around now, actually, but really, Lily... Is this how wizards communicate? Yes, it is how wizards communicate.
Yes, because they're idiots.
Sometimes, Lily replied, dashing into the living room and dropping in front of the empty fireplace, which quite suddenly burst into flames, and she scurried back but kept her eyes fixed on the fire as James's head appeared in it. Lily! James cried, looking pleased. I tried earlier, but you were at work. I know, Mom just told me. Well, good, because I wanted to. James, are you insane? Lily demanded, cutting him off. Not only is our house not connected to the Flu Network, so I don't know how you manage this, but how did you know about the Flu Network? James cried, cutting off Lily. I read about it, Lily replied quickly. But that's not the point. The point is, they put that sort of thing in books? James wondered aloud, not really paying attention to Lily. James, Lily snapped, and he focused his gaze on her. Oh, right, he said. Now, Lily, about the last letter you wrote to me. No, Lily insisted. This is highly illegal, James, and you shouldn't just be popping into muggle fireplaces. You never know who might see. Oh, for heaven's sake, Lily, it's just your family, and they know all about wizards. I really don't see what... James! Lily cried, are you really that dense? What if we had guests over or something? What if they'd seen? I think this is a very serious concern. What would your father say if he knew... All right, I won't do it again, James interrupted, but his cheeks were very red. I hadn't really thought of that, he admitted. Lily rolled her eyes. Obviously. Oh, hush, Lily. I did this for you. Lily raised her eyebrows. Did you really? What was so important to talk to me about that you couldn't just put it in a letter? James looked as though she'd touched on part of the conversation he was really interested in. Yes, that, he said, furrowing his eyebrows through. Lily, in your last letter... He cut himself off thinking. In my last letter? Lily repeated, feeling concerned. You wrote... Yes, I wrote, Lily agreed. Now really, James, what is this all about? You wrote about a boy named Ethan, James blurted out. Oh, my lord, Lily exclaimed, throwing her hands in the air. James, are you really being a ninny? A ninny? James replied, frowning. A ninny? Yes, Lily cried. What about Ethan? James looked hurt. I was just wondering if you and he... Oh, for heaven's sakes, James, Lily said, shaking her head at him. If I could reach into that fireplace right now, I'd hit you upside the head, and then I'd probably kiss you. James peeked up considerably at this. Would you? He asked, sounding extremely interested on this proposal. Lily rolled her eyes. Yes, James, I probably would, she replied, if for no other reason than to reassure your pathetically insecure male ego. Well then, James said. Hold on there a moment. James, what? Lily began as James' head abruptly disappeared, and she blinked, staring at the still crackling fire. What is this about? She never had the chance to finish her sentence, however, because at that moment James fell out of the fireplace right on top of her. Sorry, he said, scrambling to his feet and offering a hand to help her up. Sorry indeed, Lily replied, wiping ashes off her work uniform. Now I'm going to have to wash this, too. I'm sorry, you were only going to wash your apron and then wear your whole outfit again?
Apparently.
Like the pants I get.
Yeah.
But come on.
The shirt?
I said sorry, James skulked. Lily rolled her eyes. So, where were we? He said. And Lily just rolled her eyes again. Right here, she replied, hitting him upside the head. James, you're ridiculous. Stop being so insecure, she ordered, and then grabbed the front of his shirt and yanked on it, bringing his lips to hers. James was quite happy to respond to this action. They had a very pleasant moment before it was interrupted by a rather unpleasant shriek. Lily and James jumped apart, and Lily looked up to see Petunia standing at the top of the stairs, wrapped in a towel, looking quite horrified. How did he get here? She shrieked before running to the safety of her room.
What angle are the stairs at that they would be able to see her from the living room? Because I feel like her stairs are probably in her front hallway.
That is how I felt about that, unless they're, like, just, like, in the middle of the living room, and, like, they have, like, one of those, like, the open hallways at the top. James and Lily looked at each other with wide eyes. Maybe you should go, Lily suggested. Perhaps, James agreed, digging some flue powder out of his pocket and throwing it into Lily's fireplace. See you later, Lily Bean, he said, leaning in to kiss her quickly before stepping into the fireplace and bellowing Potter's cottage. The flames engulfed him, and as soon as he was gone, the flames disappeared, leaving not even a pile of ashes at the bottom of the fireplace. Lily brought her fingers to her lips and sighed, staring at the fireplace rather forlonging. Well, she said, closing the door to prevent drafts coming in when the fireplace wasn't in use. That was random. After several hours, a refreshing shower, and a brief skirmish with her sister, Lily managed to escape her house and walk to the bus station, where she rode into town to meet Ethan at a pub. He looked absolutely smashing. Even though he was just wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, Lily's stomach, quite of its own accord, decided to flip over when he smiled at her. Immediately, images of James popped into her head, and she imagined him standing right behind her, glaring at both her and Ethan. In her mind, Lily glared at the imaginary James and informed him that Ethan was just a friend, and he knew perfectly well how much she liked him being James, and that he should bugger off so she can enjoy herself. Imaginary James promptly disappeared, and Lily sat down at the table. Glad to get out of the house? Ethan asked. Lily rolled her eyes at the thought of her sister. You have no idea. Ethan grinned. I bet I have some idea. I thought you didn't have any siblings. I don't, but at school there's just some people whose necks I'd like to wring. Lily laughed. Same here. But where do you go to school? Ethan's face got mysteriously blank. Boarding school, he replied. It's not in England. Where is it? Lily asked curiously. Finland, actually. Why Finland? Ethan shrugged. Who knows? You'd have to ask my parents. Lily nodded. I go to boarding school too, actually. You do? Where's yours? Scotland. Scotland, that must be nice. Much warmer than Finland. Lily smiled. I'd imagine so. Must be nice not having Petunia in school with you anymore then. What? What? Oh, yes, right. So nice. She's away at university. Ethan looked at her curiously for a moment, but didn't say anything. I've brought a paper, he announced. I thought we'd see what times the movies were. So, Ethan's a wizard?
That's kind of what it sounds like.
Ethan's a wizard.
It's kind of the vibe that I'm getting.
Yeah, because he's a mysteriously blank face.
Mm-hmm.
Ethan's a wizard.
Just Finland.
Finland. But where in Finland? What's the name of your school? But Lily also was pretty cagey about it too, so.
I mean.
Hogwarts.
Yeah.
She is a witch. Right, Lily agreed, leaning over to peruse the paper. Oh, that one looks good, she said, pointing it out, but Ethan wrinkled his nose, which Lily noted, which was now extremely close to Lily's own nose and rather adorable. Damn it. Why did he have to be so good looking? James was handsome, of course, but Ethan was handsome.
Mm-hmm.
Like a pig. Oh my god, that's how I'm going to describe pigs from now on.
You're so handsome.
Handsome. Oh, that might have to be a quote that we do. You're so handsome.
I love it.
And a little piggy with the Harry Potter's glasses.
Yes. And
Somebody
stars.
draw that, please, for us. But Ethan was handsome on a completely different level than James. He was handsome in a, oh my goodness, you look like a god, but I would gladly bear your children kind of level. Wow, that's specific.
Yes. I've met people like that before.
And so have I. But I would have never described them that way. Now I might have to. Whereas James was just the kind of handsome that melted your heart. Or at least it melted Lily's heart, but that wasn't important. Lily was supposed to be checking out the movie times, not Ethan. She said, considering. What about that one? That looks decent. How about we go to the movie that starts at 7:50? All right, Ethan agreed, flashing a smile at Lily, which was extremely unnerving, and his face was so close. She blinked and froze, dazzled for a moment before sinking back into her chair. Good, she said vaguely, wondering what the hell was wrong with her. Ethan folded up the paper and tossed it onto the seat next to him. The rest of the time at the pub passed in rather a confusing blur. They talked about music and books and had a rather halting but extremely brief conversation about sports before moving on to careers, which lasted a surprisingly long time considering neither of them had any clue what they wanted to do, and considering Ethan was a muggle, and even if Lily knew what she wanted to do, he wouldn't have a clue what she was talking about. The walk to the theater passed in much the same fashion, and the movie was horrible, so they spent the entire time making snide comments about the actors and laughing and getting yelled at by the people around them. Ethan offered to walk Lily to the bus station, and she gladly agreed, and they walked along, laughing about the movie and swapping bad jokes in general, just being dumb teenagers. At one point, Ethan stopped suddenly to let his head fall back and stare at the cloudless night sky. You're fun, Lily, he said. I could do this every night. Lily smiled wider, her cheeks burning. Thanks, she offered, feeling silly. You're fun too, though. Well, I'm glad you think so, Ethan said, still smiling, and Lily took a moment to note how incredibly symmetrical his smile was. James tended to be rather lopsided, which she found rather endearing, but Ethan's was wonderful too. No mistake about that, and it took Lily a moment to realize how very, very close she suddenly was to Ethan's smile, and even longer to realize that his lips were now very, very close to hers, and not just close, they were touching. Lily blinked, feeling confused. Ethan was kissing her, and he was definitely kissing her. And she was definitely standing there like a fool, letting him. Indeed, her lips were putting up no resistance to the action, although her eyes were still wide open and her brain was still feeling very confused and taking its sweet time to process all of this. Her brain made a very odd decision. Lily's eyes fluttered closed for just a moment, just long enough to experience the sensation of Ethan's lips on hers and think, damn, he's a good kisser, before her brain remembered that, despite the fact that Ethan really was a good kisser, she felt absolutely nothing else for him, and she still liked James far too much to let this go on. Gently, Lily broke away, stepped away from Ethan, who looked very much as though he'd like to repeat this experience. Ethan, she began in the let's just be friends sort of tone, and his face fell, and she thought he'd rather expected this, but hoped it wouldn't happen. Yeah, I know, he said. It's that James chap, isn't it? Lily nodded. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let you. Lisa? What the hell? Ethan shook his head. It's fine. I thought I'd give it a try. Anyways, I must admit, I got a bit farther than I thought I would, he said, grinning crookedly at her. That's not fair, Lily thought. He's not allowed to have a beautiful crooked grin, too. If it weren't for the fact that the moment had the very strong image of James popping into Lily's head, she probably would have grabbed Ethan and kissed him again. As it were, however, Lily did nothing, and Ethan walked her the rest of the way to the bus station in silence. Ethan said goodbye to her in a rather normal, not too perky, not too depressed, and Lily would have thought that he was rather perfectly fine with her being absolutely gone over James, if it weren't for the fact that he stood at the bus station and watched Lily's bus drive away, decidedly forlorn look on his face. Lily sighed and put her head in her hands, and as the bus turned the corner, feeling very, very confused. America was much quieter than Melody's house. She would give it that. The money was weird, and everybody drove on the wrong side of the road, and nobody she met so far followed Quidditch. But at least it was quieter than her house. Of course, she hadn't seen New York City yet, and she'd supposed that would be a bit louder than home, but for the time being, she was enjoying the relative quiet. That's an interesting little tidbit there, that nobody seems to follow Quidditch in America, because nobody here seems to follow soccer, or as the rest of the world calls it, football.
Yes.
So I wonder what the American equivalent to Quidditch would be. Polo on hippogriffs.
Yeah.
All right, that's what the Americans play.
Polo on hippogriffs.
Melody! So much for quiet. Yes, Melody called from her bedroom. Her uncle had an absolutely amazing home just outside of Rochester, New York, and she had her very own, very large bedroom for the rest of the summer. Ah, there you are, Catalina said, appearing in the doorway. Are you all unpacked? Just about, Melody replied, plopping down on her bed and looking over at her nearly empty suitcase. All I've got left are the shoes. Good, Catalina replied, surveying Melody's wardrobe. She turned back to Melody and frowned. What happened to some of the robes we bought you last summer? A few of them are still in fashion, I believe. Oh, Melody said, I left them at home. They wouldn't fit in my trunk. This, of course, was a brilliant lie. Melody had sold nearly all of her clothes she'd bought in Venezuela and given the money to her parents. She would have done the same with her winter wardrobe had Luke not stolen it all. However, she preferred not to think about that, as it was still rather embarrassing memory. Catalina said, considering. Well, Hans wants us all to have lunch in the garden, and then we should go shopping. Melody visibly perked up. Can I send an owl while we're out? She inquired. Uncle's been using all of his for business, and I'd like to send a letter to my friend Lily. Of course, Catalina replied. Now get dressed for going out. I'll meet you in the garden in about 20 minutes. Melody nodded and jumped off the bed, perusing her wardrobe for an appropriate outfit. An hour later, she and Catalina were strolling in the hidden streets of New York City, buying out entire clothes shops with credit and having everything delivered to Hans's home via magic. Melody, after consenting to 12 new pairs of shoes and allowing Catalina to buy her a hideous set of pink dress robes, managed to get 10 minutes in a Quidditch store to drool over her new broomsticks and beater equipment. Catalina begrudgingly allowed her to buy some gloves and a new beater club before sweeping her out of the store and into a salon where a witch with a pair of scissors and a wand worked wonders on her hair. Melody stole off between trips to a sweet shop and wizarding outerwear store to send Lily a short owl. Catalina recovered her and forced her into the wizarding outerwear store, which actually turned out to be quite an enjoyable experience. Melody purchased a very beautiful, very expensive new traveling cloak and a pair of luxurious dragon leather gloves. Fashionable, affordable, and non-flammable.
Good.
I mean, all things that I look for in gloves.
Yes.
As well as a colorful red and gold scarf. After a few more stops, they headed back to Hans's via Flu, and Melody collapsed on her bed, thrilled with life, thrilled with shoes, and thrilled with shopping. She didn't know what she'd done to deserve this, but she was going to soak up every minute of it before they sent her back to the noise and frustrations of her parents' two-teeny house in England. Andromeda was a few years older than Sirius and very into art. She was in town for an art convention, which Sirius found fascinating and Bellatrix found degrading. Andromeda had a free day or two before the convention actually started, so on the second day of her visit, Sirius managed to steal her away to Potter's Cottage, where she and Sirius and James easily managed to ditch Bellatrix and leave her to the mercy of the house elves. They then spent nearly the entire day in the indoor gardens, which Andromeda had positively fallen in love with. Everywhere she turned, she saw something else she wanted to plant, and she was even so bold as to ask James whether she might be able to bring some of her artistic friends here to paint a bit, which James replied that she should ask his father. Andromeda did, in fact, ask the Minister of Magic if she could intrude on his indoor garden with paintbrushes and artist palettes, and he agreed quite adamantly, after which point Andromeda was completely lost in thought, thinking of angles and shading and painting and the people she was going to bring here to paint as well. Several days later, she did bring her artist friends to paint, and everyone tactfully avoided the indoor gardens while they were there. Work was awkward for a while. Ian had hired a new girl, Bridget, who was 17 and very blonde, and who liked to chew gum and giggle a lot, especially at Ethan. Lily did not particularly get along with Bridget, but Ethan hit it off with her very well, suspiciously well. Lily thought, considering how recently Lily had turned him down. It wasn't Bridget's fault, of course, and Ethan had gotten so uncomfortably distant from Lily, but Lily enjoyed blaming her anyways, mostly because she was the one to blame. Bridget had once had a conversation with Lily about Ethan in which Bridget named off all of Ethan's positive and negative attributes in hope of deciding which of the boys she was casually dating right now would serve as the best boyfriend. Ethan was apparently at the top of the list, and Lily refrained from rolling her eyes. Lily hadn't really been sure at the time whether to inform Bridget that Ethan had tried to date her or simply felt insulted and slapped Bridget across the face in a show of righteous indignation. Instead, however, Lily just nodded and felt stupid and then walked away. Summer began to pass in a blur of coffee and donuts and the sound of loud bands, and Lily slipped away even more from the magical world that she adored so much. So how's your summer going, Prongs?
Well, do you want
Do you want to stop and read the rest of this later?
Yeah, because there's enough left that we can split it into 3 episodes.
All right, then. I guess we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye. Hello, welcome back to Through the Trapdoor. I'm Emily.
And I'm Katie.
And this is our podcast where we read you Harry Potter fan fiction.
That's what we do.
This is the 3rd episode in a row that we're recording, so I have no life updates for you.
Same here. Although I feel like I forgot to mention something, and I thought about it halfway through us recording, and I'm like, I can talk about that. And then it also floated away again.
So how's your summer going, Prongs? Sirius asked, plopping down on a couch in one of the many random spare rooms in Potter Cottage. Andromeda had moved on to her next artist convention, and Bellatrix had been reunited with her beloved Siegfried, and Sirius was free for the remainder of the summer and spending time at James's house as usual. James sighed and pulled his bouncy ball out of his right pocket. "It's all right," he replied, shrugging. "Dad's been at work until at least midnight every day since the end of May. Things aren't so good right now, Sirius." Sirius grimaced. "That's what they've been hinting at in the papers, but no one at the ministry's been brave enough to say anything. Or rather, they're not allowed to say anything." "They don't want people to panic," James said. "The papers don't know it, but the ministry's managed to cover up 8 dark marks since schools got out, and think how many of them have been in the paper." Sirius's eyes widened. There've been at least 8 since school got out, but if the ministry's managed to block out a half of those attacks, in reality, who knows what other secrets they've been keeping from us? "The ministry's logic exactly," James replied grimly. "Like I said, they don't want people to panic, so they're trying to keep the truth to a minimum. They don't want people to find out what they've already hidden. They want everyone to think that they've got it perfectly under control, except they don't." "Right," James agreed. "Bloody hell," Sirius muttered under his breath. "I sure hope all the Aurors nowadays are spanking good, and I hope Dumbledore's got a plan." "Bully, me too." Sirius shuddered, still thinking, imagine if those people in the papers were people we actually knew. The targets have been mostly Muggle, and we don't really know too many Muggles. But imagine if he started targeting wizards. What in the world would we do then? "I don't know," James replied, looking very much as though he was starting to get a headache. "But I sure hope it all is over soon." Lily jumped easily off the bus as it came to a rolling stop at the corner of Lenox and Westfield, and she began walking in bouncy, happy steps down the street. Working tonight had been unusually fun. Ethan had been there, for one, and he was exceptionally flirty, which was always enjoyable, although James probably wouldn't have seen the enjoyment. For another, business had been good, the stream of customers had been constant rather than in small spurts, and the shop stayed at least half full until 10, when the customers slowly filtered out. All in all, the night had been successful, Lily finally getting the hang of the coffee machine. She hadn't broken any glasses, although she did manage to spill some coffee on Bridget's white sweater. That had been a tragedy.
Oh. Also, why are you wearing a white sweater to work if you work in a coffee shop? I don't wear white and I work in retail.
Yeah, no. Plus, hopefully when she got home, she wouldn't have to worry about seeing Petunia as she was out with friends. The sky was dark and clear and full of twinkling stars, and Lily looked up at it as she walked. Lily couldn't take her eyes off the sky. The moon was large and full and a beautiful, brilliant silver. All the stars were positively shimmering. Just as she was beginning to wonder if James was looking at the same moon and the same stars as she was, she saw an odd rippling disturbance in the sky, and stopped just short of Harper Ave, frowning. Presently, the breeze carried to her ears some unpleasant sounds, far away shouting, even screaming, and Lily's heart began beating irregularly as the disturbance in the sky became more profound. The shrieking sound had gone, but there was still some distant shouting, and small rippling disturbance in the sky erupted into a definite form and figure, that of a giant skull with a serpent slithering out of its mouth. Lily froze and felt an icy chill run through her veins as her mind processed the meaning of the skull in the sky. "No," she thought suddenly. "No, not them. Please, dear Lord, anyone but them." At this point, curiosity overcame her fear, and she dashed around the corner, not caring what became of her as long as the skull wasn't positioned over a white 2-story house with blue shutters and a blue front door and beautiful flower beds situated around 2 tall, proud trees, which several men in dark cloaks with hideous masks were leaning against, staring at the white, blue-shuttered house, from which shrieks, shouts, and an occasional ominous flash of magic indicating light were still issuing. The sounds and light stopped abruptly, and another black-cloaked man came out the front door and motioned to the men clustered around the trees, and with soft pops, they all began to disapparate. Lily stood on the corner in shock and silence and watched the Death Eaters leave. And that might have been all, had the blood-curdling shriek not come from a spot directly behind Lily. Lily jumped and whirled around to find herself face to face with her sister Petunia, who was very white and terror-stricken, and whose mouth was wide open, issuing a terrible scream, which Lily quickly stifled before whirling around to assess if any of the Death Eaters had heard, judging by the fact that the remaining black-cloaked men had whipped their wands out and were stalking down the street in the direction of Lily and her sister. They had. Lily grabbed Petunia's hand and yanked her viciously around the corner and attempted to begin running away, but for some reason Petunia resisted. "No!" she shrieked, trying to wrench her hand from Lily's grasp. "We have to go back. We have to tell those men to go away, to call the police, and—" "Shut up and run, Petunia, unless you want to die," Lily cried desperately as the Death Eaters rounded the corner and began shouting. One of them yelled an incantation, and an ominous-looking green spell shot at Lily, who ducked and began tugging Petunia's hand again. Her sister was slightly more compliant this time, but immediately became apparent that she was not wearing shoes fit for running. "Lily!" Petunia shrieked, staggering along behind her younger sister and wincing as a spell flew right past her ear. "Who are these people? And what is that thing in the sky? And—" "Later!" Lily cried, rounding the next corner. She came to as sharply as she could, which apparently was too sharp for Petunia, as she stumbled and fell right over on top of Lily, who shrieked and toppled over as well, flinging out her right arm in a desperate attempt to break her fall. All this accomplished was to drive searing pain up her arm, pain which Lily imagined was only a precursor to what the Death Eaters would do to them when they were inevitably caught. As Lily laid on the ground trying to catch her breath and come to terms with the pain shooting up her arm, Petunia screamed again blood-curdlingly, and Lily yelled out, as well as the blinding light obscured her vision, and for a moment all she heard was Petunia's screaming and her own screaming, and the footsteps of Death Eaters approaching the corner, and her heart beating, and then something very large approached Lily's hand very quickly, and she closed her eyes tight and prayed. That's actually the end of the chapter, and the rest is an author's note. All right, so I guess we're going to combine this with the end of yours.
Oh, yeah. Let's just add that to the end of the other one.
Yeah, so we're just going to add this to the end of...
So surprise, you got 2 people in this episode reading you a story. Because we didn't realize that the end of this was a giant author's note because we were reading on our phones.
Yeah, the last...
big old chunk here.
Big chunk is just the author replying to...
So it looks like comments?
Yes, comments on the story. So
our first cliffhanger, yay.
All right, let's see where this goes.
All right, we'll see y'all later.
We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on our journey through the trapdoor.
You can leave us a review on Facebook or Apple Podcasts. It would literally mean the world to us.
Or you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at TheTrapdoor16.
Or if you have any longer thoughts, you can shoot us an email at throughthetrapdoor16@gmail.com.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you again next week.
See you next week.